Everybody ready? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I hereby call this meeting of the WMSC to order. This meeting is being recorded as well as streamed live for the public. Ms. Silbaugh, do we have a quorum today?
We do, Chair Hart. Participating in the meeting this afternoon is yourself as Chair, Vice Chair Lobby, Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke, Commissioners Bob, Rouse, Conklin, and I understand that Commissioner Higgins is joining as we speak. Commissioner Higgins is a non-voting member today.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Now we will turn to our safety message from Mr. Braxton. Mr. Braxton, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. September marks National Preparedness Month, the annual campaign to remind everyone that preparing for emergencies and disasters can keep them, their families, and their communities safe. Talking about disasters or emergencies isn't always easy. However, it is important to start taking steps to get ready and stay safe. Starting a conversation today can help you and your family to take more actions to prepare. By taking simple steps, you can build your preparedness at your own pace. Some of the things you can do to prepare include setting aside a defined time when everyone is calm and relaxed, so decisions aren't rushed and people feel more comfortable about the topic. You can also talk about the steps you've taken to prepare and encourage others to ask questions about preparedness actions that might work for them. As part of our work, we perform safety oversight at Metrorail's emergency management programs, including as it relates to the execution of and compliance with Metrorail's rules and procedures. Through our investigations program, our audits program, and through observations of Metrorail full-scale exercises. The second triennial WMSC audit of Metrorail's emergency management and life safety programs is in progress. The final report for this triennial audit will be issued by the WMSC in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Braxton. We will now move on to the minutes from our previous meeting. Secretary Treasurer Farrar Dyke, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. The minutes of the August 6, 2024 meeting were posted for review. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? I move approval of the August 6 minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Bob has second. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay.
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 Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Thank you.
Chair, the vote is 6 yeas to 0 nays. The motion to approve the minutes as presented has passed.
Thank you, Ms. Silbaugh. Next on our agenda is public comments. We provide an opportunity for public comments at each of our meetings. To ensure that we recognize all who wish to speak, we provided an opportunity for those who have joined the Zoom meeting to sign up in the chat box. If you wish to speak but did not sign, please do so now. I would also remind everyone, including those of you watching on YouTube, that you can always report any concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. Ms. Minor, do we have anyone who has indicated they would like to speak today?
No, Chair Hart. I see no names in the chat.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Minor. We will now continue with the next agenda item, which is my remarks. Our meeting today includes updates on the WMSC's ongoing safety oversight activities and the actions that we take on a daily basis to help ensure that Metrorail upholds its safety commitments and strives to continuously improve the safety of its system. I appreciate the ongoing communication and coordination that the WMSC staff conducts with Metrorail at all levels of both organizations. This includes the ongoing work related to audits and corrective action plans, safety certification, and inspections. Later in this meeting, we will discuss updates on other oversight activities, including those related to audits, inspections, investigations, and oversight of Metrorail's safety certification. Before we move to that, I'd like to express the Commission's appreciation for the service of Commissioner Jennifer DeBrule. At the end of August, Ms. DeBrule left her role as an alternate commissioner as she takes on new professional opportunity. Ms. DeBrule previously served as the director of the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation. Prior to being appointed as a commissioner, Ms. DeBrule did significant work helping to create the WMSC in addition to other public service contributions across the Commonwealth and the entire region, that have directly benefited countless people. We appreciate her work at the WMSC and wish her all the best in the future. Dr. Meyer, do you have any opening remarks?
Yes, thank you, Chair Hart. I have updates on several areas of our oversight work. I'll start with some good news. In May, I reported to you that the Federal Transit Administration conducted the on-site portion of its triennial audit of the WMSC's compliance with the FTA's safety oversight regulations. On August 23rd, we received a draft of the FTA's audit report for our review for any factual errors. The draft audit contains one finding, which seeks clarification of entries in our CAP tracking log. Once the WMSC receives the FTA's final audit report, we will propose a corrective action plan to address that finding. We appreciate the FTA's time and attention toward our oversight program. Second, as I reported in June, the WMSC submitted its risk-based inspections program in response to the FTA special directive. The FTA issued a special directive to each state safety oversight agency requiring each SSOA to create a risk-based inspection program satisfying the FTA's requirements. On September 10th, we received written confirmation from the FTA that our submission satisfies the requirements. With our program approved, we will now turn to implementation of the risk-based inspection program. Both of these successes, of course, were a team effort. However, I would like to specifically recognize Tiffany Miner's work as the primary point of contact for the FTA audit and Davis Raddick's work as the primary developer and author of our RBI plan. Over the last several months, I've reported on the status of the subpoena that we issued on April 8th to compel WMATA's compliance with our audit of Metro Rail's fitness for duty and occupational health programs. Since my last report on August 6th, the WMSC audit team again visited Metro Rail's New Carrollton headquarters for another in-person review of drug and alcohol-related records. After reviewing the materials produced so far, the audit team made follow-up requests, and we look forward to Metro Rail's responses to those. Both organizations' counsel has discussed potential next steps related to the initial document requests about Metro Rail's occupational health programs. I'll continue to underscore that worker safety is a fundamental part of the safety of the WMATA rail system as it is defined in WMATA's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan. The WMSC is obligated to oversee the safety elements in WMATA's agency safety plan, and we will continue our efforts so that this work can move forward. Last, I cannot report any progress on the drafting of 2 corrective action plans stemming from our automatic train control and signals audit and from the revenue vehicles audit. Metro Rail refuses to develop caps, saying that these caps are intertwined with the subpoena issue for responses to initial document requests for the Fitness for Duty and Occupational Health Program audit. Metro Rail's objection to the WMSC's authority are without merit and do not justify their refusal to fully respond to the subpoena. The WMSC will continue to collaborate with Metro Rail in an effort to find a solution that aligns with our authorities. Moving on to a different topic, during the August public meeting, commissioners raised concerns about Metro Rail's roadway worker protection program, which is, of course, designed to protect roadway workers from being struck by moving rail vehicles. As a mitigation against that hazard, Metro Rail has had a long-standing rule requiring dedicated watchman lookout anytime there is rail vehicle movement within a work zone or work is conducted on an active revenue track. Through our regular observations at the Metro Rail Safety Standards Committee meetings, we recently learned that Metro Rail is proposing to remove the requirement for a dedicated watchman lookout for rail vehicle movement within work zones. This change increases the probability of catastrophic consequences, such as employees being struck by moving equipment. WMSC staff communicated to Metro Rail that the risk of roadway workers being struck by rail vehicles has not changed, and therefore it is inadvisable to remove the requirement for a watchman lookout. Metro Rail leadership responded that it would review the rule change proposal and would respond to the WMSC before any change is made. Therefore, the rule requiring the use of watchman lookouts in work zones remains in effect. On August 28th, we conducted inspections of 3 Metro Rail train control rooms at Farragut North, Foggy Bottom, and Cleveland Park stations. The vital systems located in train control rooms are critical to ensuring safe Metro Rail train operations. As we wrote 2 years ago in our train control room order, protecting these vital systems from dust, water, and other contaminants has long been recognized as critical to life safety in rail operations. During our inspection of these train control rooms last month, we found chemicals being stored against Metro Rail's written requirements in the Farragut North train control room. And we also found fire-damaged walls in the Cleveland Park train control room from a fire that we learned occurred on June 28th. These conditions were communicated to Metro Rail personnel who accompanied WMSC staff on these inspections, as well as to relevant Metro Rail managers. We continue to closely monitor the conditions of train control rooms because the safety of Metro Rail train operation depends on the vital equipment that is housed in those rooms. The WMSC conducted an inspection at Silver Spring Station on September 3rd, following its reopening on August 30th, after several Red Line stations were closed for rehabilitation work this summer. Our inspectors observed that several of the safety mitigations that Metro Rail required to be in place at that station were not present, including the lack of warning signs about construction for passengers and a Metro Rail designated worker in place to monitor behavior around the scaffolding system, and the safety of scaffolding installation, including grounding of temporary structures. These safety mitigations are designed to allow the continuation of construction while the station is open for passenger use. Again, the WMSC notified Metro Rail staff at Silver Spring Station and Metro Rail management, and the WMSC will conduct follow-up inspections to verify that any necessary corrections are made. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Dr. Meyer? Okay, seeing none, we will now move on to our next agenda item, which is audits with an update.
I'm sorry, Chair Hart. Commissioner Conklin has raised his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Commissioner Conklin, please.
Yeah, I had one question about the fire in the train control room and whether that fire was an incident we might have expected to be reported. It sounds like we learned of it upon the evaluation rather than knowing about it at the time it occurred, and whether that fire posed any hazard to that train control equipment or if it was a small incidental other type.
We did learn about it on our inspection, and it did concern us, but I'll ask Ms. Samara Singha to elaborate, since I saw her nodding her head.
Commissioner Conklin, yes, we did get a notification about that fire at Cleveland Park, which took place on June 28th. So that is part of our matrix of incidents that need the 2-hour reporting to us, and Metro met that requirement.
Okay, thanks. And was there any relationship to the train control equipment and the fire, or did they just happen to be in the same place?
I would like to note that it was not inside the train control room. It was in a room adjacent to the train control room. But
Okay,
a wall shared with the train control room and this adjacent room was damaged in the fire.
Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. Any further questions from the commissioners?
Yes,
Dr. Meyer,
yes, Chair Hart,
yes, please.
Commissioner Rouse. Sorry, we're getting all these little pop-ups. Commissioner Rouse has raised his hand as well.
Go
Thank
for it.
you. Very quick, Mr. Wright, on this issue with the roadway worker and the advanced watchman lookout not being there, did they propose any alternatives, or is it just because it's not effective or they don't believe it's effective, they don't see any value to it?
It's not so much that they don't see value to it. The justification or the explanation that reached me was that Metro Rail's rules and procedures elsewhere in the document already contain provisions, and so the watchman lookout, not the advanced mobile flagger, but the watchman lookout rule could be removed because it's handled in other places within the rule book. So our concern was not so much the specific change at hand, although obviously having a watchman lookout is extremely important. Our concern really is the multiple continuing changes to the RWP program and the our positioning in the Rules Committee is not really a place where we can see and observe an overall strategy with regard to that program. And rather, what we see is a succession of changes of varying levels of significance and a difficulty of evaluating that significance because each change is proposed individually as opposed to the opportunity to review an overall program. And so that's really the larger concern at play and something that we will pay careful attention to going forward.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from the commissioners for Dr. Meyer?
I see no other hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll move on to our next item, which is audits with an update from Mr. Davis Raddick. Mr. Raddick?
Thank you, Chair Hart. The WMSC is in the midst of conducting our second triennial cycle of audits, which are aimed at examining Metrorail's compliance with its public transportation agent's safety plan and associated commitments and requirements. As Dr. Meyer stated, the WMSC has not yet initiated the Fitness for Duty and Occupational Health Programs audit. In an effort to continue gathering all responsive documents to those initial requests in August, members of the audit team visited WMATA's New Carrollton headquarters to inspect and retrieve requested documents related to WMATA's drug and alcohol programs. The audit team also sent follow-up requests based on gaps we identified with the documents that have been produced so far. Although the production so far has been limited only to fitness for duty and drug and alcohol related requests, counsel from each side continue to discuss the requests made for this audit and the information that has not yet been provided. Once those documents are collected and reviewed, the WMSC audit team is ready to begin the Fitness for Duty and Occupational Health Programs audit. As with all audits, we conduct interviews and on-site observations and coordinate those activities with Metrorail. Our Emergency Management and Life Safety Programs audit is currently in progress. This audit includes items such as emergency preparedness and response, egress and tunnel lighting, and we have conducted interviews and observations and are in the process of reviewing the outcomes and data from those. Our review of data and information learned during interviews and observations is an iterative process that starts with the first documents received and continues through to the audit's conclusion. We anticipate having an exit conference with Metrorail in October. On August 5th, we sent the audit notification and initial document request to Metrorail for our next audit, which is the Control Center and Rail Operations audit. Metrorail provided a timely reply to those initial document requests on September 5th. Throughout the month of September, the audit team will review these documents and continue planning the interviews and on-site observations, which will commence in October. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Raddick. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Raddick?
I see no hands raised, Chair.
Okay, thank you. In that case, we will now take up the next agenda item, which is corrective action plans. Ms. Rhodes, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Metrorail currently has 91 open caps and has other caps in development. These caps in development, once approved by the WMSC, will be added to the list of open caps we manage. Since our last public meeting, we have closed one cap. Caps in development include those related to the roadway worker protection audit. Metrorail timely provided proposals for each of the 13 findings from that audit. Last week, the WMSC provided feedback to Metrorail on each of the proposed caps. Each cap includes discrete deliverables, the steps necessary to address the identified safety issue, and the specific deadline when each step will be completed. Since the last public meeting, Metrorail has submitted 38 new deliverables for WMSC review in Metrorail's regular weekly submissions. One of these cap deliverables was deliverable 1 from cap C0146. Which was due to us for review on August 9th, 2024, but was not received. For background, C0146 is based on a recommendation from the 2021 Revenue Vehicles or Railcar Audit. The WMSC identified that Metrorail railcars do not include inward and outward-facing audio and image recorders in all operating compartments. The report noted that Metrorail would benefit from including audio recordings, as recommended by the National Transportation Safety Board and the Federal Transit Administration. Following a National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, investigation of a February 21, 2017 Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, SEPTA, Market Frankford Line collision, the NTSB issued Safety Recommendation R17-013, which recommended that all transit operating compartments include crash and fire protection, inward and outward facing audio and image recorders capable of providing recordings to verify train crew actions and train operating conditions, both for the investigation of accidents and as a tool to improve operational safety. Then in 2020, the FTA issued Safety Bulletin 20-2 that stated in part, rail transit vehicles that are not equipped with inward and outward-facing image and audio recorders may pose an increased risk to RTAs. More recently, in 2023, the Federal Railroad Administration announced a final rule requiring the installation of inward and outward-facing image recording devices on all passenger train-led locomotives, providing scheduled intercity, rail, passenger, or commuter service. Metrorail's legacy fleet, the 2000, 3000, and 6000 series railcars, do not have inward or outward audio or image recorders in any operating compartments. The 7000 series has only limited in-cab and outward video capabilities. Metrorail created CAP C0146, which the WMSC approved on January 7, 2022. As stated, on August 9, 2024, the project plan was due for camera and audio recording equipment procurement, installation, and testing for 6000 and 7000 series railcars. Instead, Metrorail submitted a memorandum on August 12, 2024, stating that Metrorail currently has no clear timeline or plan for the execution of C0146. Based on the WMSC program standard, section 11.b, the WMSC issued a notice of non-compliance to Metrorail on August 22, 2024. In the notice, the WMSC stated that for Metrorail to return to compliance for C0146, Metrorail must submit the project plan, which is actionable item 1, by September 12, 2024. The WMSC received the project plan under actionable item number 1 on September 9, 2024, as required by the notice of noncompliance. Although the WMSC appreciates the efforts put into the project plan that Metrorail has now provided for review, the project plan indicates that the main objective of the CAP, the completion of camera and audio recording equipment testing, procurement, and installation for all 6000 and 7000 series railcars, which was to be completed by July 15th of 2026, will now not be completed until September of 2028. As stated in the August 22nd Notice of Noncompliance to Metrorail, all other actionable items for C0146 remain due as previously approved by the WMSC. The WMSC has scheduled a meeting later this week with Metrorail to discuss the path forward for this CAP. Moving to the one CAP closed since our last public meeting, CAP C0181. This CAP was developed based on a finding from our 2021 audit of rail operations. The finding stated that elements of Metrorail have a culture that accepts non-compliance with written operational rules, instructions, and manuals. To address this finding, Metro Rail implemented its new safety management system for the Office of Rail Operations. This included new procedures and training for all personnel within rail operations on the common issues and safety-related violations and risks, a new safety risk submission tool, and a new dashboard for tracking risks and instituting mitigation by various safety committees throughout Metro Rail. The WMSC monitors Metro Rail's actions on an ongoing basis through the review of these caps during our audit, inspection, and other oversight activities. As an example, the culture of non-compliance finding that the just closed C0181 addressed will be examined again in the coming months during the Control Center and Rail Operations audit. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Ms. Rhodes?
Yes, Chair Hart. Commissioner Conklin has his hand raised.
Yes, Commissioner Conklin.
Thank you. Ms. Rhodes, I had a couple questions about the recording cap that you described. Did you understand any reason why there's the delay in the implementation of those recorders? And I was also curious if we had an idea of how many devices this represents. Is it 50? Is it 500? How many camera and audio recorders are there? Then my last question about that is how the cap implementation timeline overlays with the replacement of those legacy rail cars, if we have any idea about that.
Thank you for that question, Commissioner Conklin. I believe the first part was an understanding of the reasoning for the repeated delays on this cap, which spanned several different reasons, as there were 4 different modification requests that have been received on this cap since its creation in January of 2022. A brief way to summarize those is a repeated request from Metro Rail to redirect or re-outline their plan for executing this cap, which included aligning the effort for the 6,000 and 7,000 series rail cars with something that they call their enterprise-wide video program. Additionally, there were several shorter modification requests seeking additional time to clarify their plan. So there were a few different reasons cited among several different requests. The second tier
Reasons were about the plan and not so much any delay in technology availability or procurement or funding availability or things like that.
True. The requests were generally a realignment of the plan or direction that Metro Rail wanted to take to execute this cap.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. The second, I believe, layer of your question had to do with what scope are we looking at in terms of rail cars to be addressed with this cap. I'm curious if my colleague, perhaps John Durenzo or Manny Lopez, might have that information handy, and if they don't, we can definitely get back to you on a solid number for that.
Okay. And my last part of the question is whether there's a timeliness on this with respect to the replacement of the legacy fleet, or is this going to be worth pursuing at that point if we're going to be replacing rail cars anyway?
Thank you for that. And I'm also curious if either of my colleagues who have greater familiarity with the fleets generally, John Durenzo or Manny Lopez, might be comfortable speaking to that at this time. And if not, again, we can definitely get you a more detailed answer on that when we're able to have that in a concrete way.
Right. I can help you out with some of it.
Thanks, John.
As far as the legacy cars, they're looking at the 6,000s only, as far as I know. I don't think they're going to address the 2s and 3s, or the 2s are already out of service, but the 3s. And as far as the numbers, I have not seen a plan, but we'll have to look into that to see what the total number of units that would need for, based on how many cameras and audio devices are going to be put into each rail car.
Thanks for those responses.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Commissioner Bob.
Yes, I have a a comment on a broader question. I mean, not a question, a statement, culture of non-compliance. It's a large issue. I mean, it's a large statement in in that you can make you can comply with some issues, but you go right back to where you were before because the culture hasn't changed. And so my question is, how do we work with them to address this culture of non-compliance, which goes beyond just fixing the technical issue? It has to do more with how individuals work and how they take their work seriously.
Sure. Thank you for that question, Commissioner Bob. In consideration of this specific cap C0181, as in the consideration of the execution and potential closure of any specific cap, we're considering the discrete actionable steps that are agreed upon when the cap is created and approved by the WMSC, which results in a way, an agreement between WMATA and the WMSC about what WMATA needs to do to meet the needs of the safety deficiency identified in the cap and ultimately achieve closure of the cap. So in the case of this specific cap, C0181, WMATA executed all of the actionable items that were defined when this cap was created, which included the creation of trainings, which they provided proof of staff completion of, as well as the creation of risk reporting tools and 6 months of verification records that were provided as required by the cap, showing these items in practice. Given WMATA's provided evidence meeting the requirements specified for this specific cap, closure of C0181 was appropriate. As with all caps that are closed, we will continue monitoring this area in future safety oversight activities, including our control center and rail operations audit, which is scheduled to begin next month, which begins to address your overarching comment or question on how we continue to help Metro Rail move forward and improve a culture of compliance with procedures and evaluation of safety. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
And Chair Hart, Commissioner, Vice Chair Lobby has his hand raised as well.
yes, Vice Chair Lobby.
Commissioner Lobby, you're muted.
Sorry. My questions were along the same lines as Commissioner Bob, in that we've closed cap C0181, and cap 081 does address a culture that accepts non-compliance with written operational rules. And to me, by closing this cap, are we convinced that this issue, this culture that accepts non-compliance with operational rules, is this no longer an issue?
I appreciate the question, Commissioner Laube. In terms of considering Metro Rail's culture of compliance, that is something that we do take very seriously and will consider in future oversight activities, including the upcoming audit, which begins next month in this same functional area of Metro. CAPs are defined as discrete, actionable processes that have specific deliverables asked of WMATA to prove movement towards addressing the safety deficiency identified in the CAP, which for C0181, WMATA did meet all of the required actionable items. We reviewed each of those deliverables in detail to be confident that they did meet the things that were asked of them for completion of this CAP. For that reason, closure of C0181 was appropriate. Moving forward in consideration of cultural valuation of safety and procedural compliance, that is something that we'll continue to consider in oversight activities, as we do with any cap that we closed. Once we close a cap, we don't just tuck that issue area away. Rather, in future efforts, we continue to monitor that area as well as any other closed cap.
Well, in hindsight, should we have required more from Washington Metro because our accident investigation reports show that disregard and non-compliance with written rules are continuing to go on in the operational part of Washington Metro. It concerns me a little bit that we're closing a cap that addresses this as basically as satisfactory when we really haven't, at least in my view, adequately addressed the problem.
We share your concern, Commissioner Lobby, and I think your criticism is of the phrasing of the finding itself is one that we've had internally. I think if we were writing a finding today, we would write it a little differently so that, as Ashley just said, as Ms. Rose just said, the deliverables could be more tightly packaged to address the finding. But in this case, we wrote what we wrote, and we also approved the deliverables that Metro delivered. I mean, we approved of the plan to deliver those deliverables. Then Metro worked its plan and delivered what they said they would do and what we asked or what we approved. And consequently, we felt it was only appropriate to close the corrective action plan. And as Ashley has said, much more importantly, this is an important issue to us, and we will continue to pay attention to Metro's compliance with its own rules in I think it's fair to say all of the audit and inspection work we do.
Okay, and I don't, I know hindsight is 20/20, and maybe the requirements that cap 0181 could be more stringent, but it seems to me with the ongoing problems that we're going to have to put another cap in place that essentially states the same problem, that there is non-compliance with written operational rules. What other question is this? It says that Metro Rail implemented its new safety management system for Office of Rail Operations. Do any of these include greater oversight of individuals, as far as rules compliance? Is there any increase in managers, providing oversight of individuals that they're in charge with to make sure that these rules are being followed?
I note that Ms. Samarasinha looks quizzical, and either that means she might wish to take a shot at answering the question, or maybe could ask you to clarify it.
Yes, so I would ask Commissioner Lobby to clarify the question. Understandably, this corrective action plan really directed the non-compliance through a rail transportation audit corrective action plan, which pertains to departments that come under the rail operations / rail transportation functional area. And the issue that you're talking about, as you describe it, extends to the entire Metro Rail organization as you're describing it. So can you please clarify the question about managers or employees?
I'll be happy to clarify it. I'm used to, if there's rule compliance problems, the managers are charged with going out and observing and making sure that they manage the personnel to comply with the rules. They go and they do observations, they do efficiency tests, that they go out and measure compliance with the rules. And if you don't do that, the only time that you find out that they're not following the rules is after you have an accident or an incident. And that seems to be what's happening here. And I'm wondering, with this plan that Metro Rail came up, its new safety management system for the Office of Rail Operations, whether part of that is to charge the managers with actually supervising the people they're responsible for and making sure that they follow the policies, procedures, and rules that Metro has signed up for.
And the direct answer to that is yes. And it is further boiled down into making sure supervisors understand what is their role and making sure those supervisors are trained in properly coaching and overseeing the employees that report directly to them in order for them to provide the direction and provide the coaching in order to ensure that employees understand the rules and are provided clarification when they don't, and take corrective measures when there are corrective measures required in order to bring them back into understanding rules. So the answer is yes, to provide the tools to supervisors and managers in order for them to perform the duty of coaching and overseeing rules compliance in terms of specific rules, as well as making sure they understand the impact when those safety rules are not complied with. So communicating all that to the employees is something that is part of this corrective action plan.
Well, I think the training is great. Making people aware of what the rules are is great because I think they know what the rules are. But I think what has been missing long term is there's a requirement for the managers to actually go out and do these observations and actually measure compliance of the people they're responsible for. I know that they know what should happen, but do they actually go out and manage the people in such a way that they do follow these regulations, or is that just assumed that they're going to do that?
We have observed over the years, Commissioner Lobby, Metro Rail initiating various compliance measuring activities or compliance monitoring activities. I don't believe, as I'm speaking, that some of the things we've seen in the past are still in place. So I think if you'll allow us, we'll take it as an IOU to evaluate the not just the extent to which this cap may or may not contain a compliance monitoring sort of thing that some people call efficiency testing, but we'll look more globally at the program, and if the deficiencies exist that you're describing, we will work to correct that.
Well, I think that would be good. I think that the next time you issue a cap on noncompliance with operational rules, that the list that Washington Metro must comply with needs to include some kind of compliance monitoring tool. And to me, that's the first line supervisors making sure that the people they're responsible for follow the requirements. And I think that's critical to include in any cap that's going to impact non-compliance with rules. Thank you.
Listening to that conversation, it occurs to me that perhaps we should be more mindful of what caps are for. In my view, caps are not for very big picture broad items like be good. You would not issue a cap that says be good. You want a cap that is specific enough to be measurable in terms of whether it's being done or not. And so I just say be mindful of not using overly global language on the caps. Is just a suggestion that I'm throwing out now.
No, you're absolutely saying things that are consistent with our approach and with Ms. Rhodes' comments a moment ago that deliverables that are, gosh, I forgot the words that she used, but that are specific and actionable, measurable, those kinds of things. Absolutely.
And I agree with Chairman Hart on that, but I think that if you're going to issue a cap, you need to have a positive result, and just being able to check the box that we did this and this and this, and really not affecting the root problem, I think that's an issue. So the caps have to be focused enough to actually have an impact on the root problem, and in this case, it's not non-compliance with rules. And if the things that are on our list are not really going to affect the root problem, I think we either have to do more caps or find another way to approach the problem.
And there are many tools in our toolbox, so there's absolutely no disagreement here. I wonder, unless there's more discussion on caps, and I'm sorry, I'm not even certain if, Ms. Rhodes, if you had more to present. If we're ready to move on, or when we're ready to move on to the next agenda item, Chair Hart, before you do so, I think that Ms. Samara Singha would like to make a clarification about something earlier in the meeting.
Go for it.
Thank you, Chair Hart. To Commissioner Conklin's question about that fire on June 28th at Cleveland Park, I answered the question saying that the fire was adjacent to the train control room and a room adjacent to the train control room. However, the correct fact is that the fire took place inside the train control room on a rack containing other equipment that was adjacent to the train control room equipment. So the fire took place inside the train control room. The equipment that the fire essentially started in consumed the equipment and beyond repair. And those were pieces of equipment adjacent to other train control room equipment inside the train control room. This is the fire that took place on June 28th at Cleveland Park.
Thanks. So the fire was related to train control equipment or other equipment that was in that room?
Yes.
Which was it, the actual train control equipment or other equipment?
It is other equipment. It's a remote terminal unit, and Paul Smith, who is train control and signals expert, as well as Director of Systems Engineering, has the next agenda item coming up on safety certification, and he's more than ready to provide any additional information regarding that fire as far as what was consumed.
So did the fire itself affect the ability to operate the rail system, or was it not that consequential? I was just curious about the nature of the fire.
Right, so I can jump in there. The RTU was destroyed in the fire. The RTU is a piece of equipment that sends basically the SCADA information back to the control center. So all of the control of fans and stuff like that was lost, with the destruction of that RTU. But it did not affect the actual train control equipment in the room other than that RTU.
Okay. Thanks for the clarifications.
Yes, sir.
And thanks to everyone for the very useful questions and the helpful answers to give us a better picture of what's going on. I appreciate that. Do we have any further questions for Ms. Rhodes from the commissioners?
I see no other hands.
Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is an update on some of the WMSC's latest activities overseeing Metro Rail safety certification process. Paul Smith, WMSC Director of Systems Engineering, will present this item. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Chair Hart. The underlying philosophy of the safety certification program at Metro Rail is to comprehensively identify hazards and evaluate the probability and severity of each hazard, and to mitigate those hazards based on Metro Rail's safety risk assessment methodology. Safety certification is performed during the design, construction, testing, and commissioning of a project to prevent these hazards from resulting in safety events affecting Metro Rail employees, passengers, equipment, systems, and infrastructure. When the project is placed into revenue operation, Metro Rail has a safety certification program plan which applies to all eligible projects. This plan describes the requirements of the safety certification program. The WMSC's program standard describes the oversight WMSC implements to verify that Metro Rail is adhering to its obligations for safety certification of various projects. Similar to our other program areas, we maintain overall situational awareness of the health of the Metro Rail safety certification program by routinely observing WMATA's safety certification review committee actions, observing the functions of multidisciplinary Metro Rail working groups assigned for various projects undergoing safety certification, and by regularly discussing inconsistencies and deviations with project personnel, as well as the safety certification team within Metro Rail Safety and Readiness Department. In addition to this overall awareness of the health of the Metro Rail Safety Certification Program, the WMSC also designates projects for in-depth review. Once such a designation is communicated to Metro Rail, a project designated for WMSC's in-depth review, cannot be placed into revenue operation by Metrorail until the WMSC has concurred that Metrorail has completed the safety certification requirement of that project. Some of the activities we undertake as part of conducting an in-depth review include reviewing project documents, test procedures, results of tests completed, reviewing training programs for impacted personnel, and observing various drills and exercises to confirm operational readiness. We use the data and inputs from our inspections, investigations, corrective action plans, and audits to take a comprehensive approach to the safety certification oversight. Currently, we have designated 4 projects for in-depth review: the 8000 series railcars, the activation of automatic train operation, the return to design speeds, and the automated wayside inspection system. WMSC and Metrorail are in the early stages of planning an activation of ATO fall workshop. This workshop will be used to provide WMSC's feedback on Metrorail safety certification work on this project thus far. In order to enable such feedback, the WMSC has requested and Metrorail submitted a draft safety certification package yesterday. The WMSC looks forward to the review of this information. The WMSC team continues to observe the dedicated multidisciplinary safety certification working groups for all of these projects and directly communicates with the project managers as well as the safety certification managers on any safety certification inconsistencies. One such example was Metrorail approving a permanent order to allow for the return to design speed on October 1st of this year. The Return to Design Speed project is the project designation that is currently undergoing safety certification for higher operating speeds across the system. These speeds in some cases are higher than Metrorail has previously operated. This permanent order action did not take into account that Metrorail has to complete all safety certification steps in order for the WMSC to concur that safety certification has been applied accurately prior to introducing it into revenue operation. There is remaining safety certification work for evaluating the return to design speed, which also means that the WMSC has not concurred that safety certification has been performed. Thus, the permanent order could not go into effect on October 1. On September 6th, Metrorail rescinded this permanent order and indicated it will seek approval for it once the safety certification process for the Return to Design Speed project has been completed. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Are there any questions from the commissioners for Mr. Smith?
I don't see any hands, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We will now move on to safety event investigations. Mr. Quigley, I understand that you have updates on ongoing investigations and reports to present for our consideration today. We will hear presentations of all of the reports and then consider a single motion on all of them together. If any commissioner wishes to remove a report from the group that we will consider as a single vote, please indicate that at the end of the presentation of that report. Mr. Quigley, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. We continue to work with Metrorail's investigation team on investigations and associated corrective actions. We're proud of our effective collaboration and communication that has led to significant improvements in the safety event investigation reports over the last 5 years. Each week, we engage in multiple investigative interviews and activities. Recently, we have been investigating several notable events that include a red signal overrun at downtown Largo Station that occurred on August 30th. After offloading passengers at the station, trains were using the rear interlocking to reverse onto the opposite track due to the front interlocking being clamped in a normal position. The train operator, experiencing poor radio reception, moved the train without positive confirmation from the terminal supervisor. The operator assumed he had a blocking permission to proceed, but he never received the actual transmission. We're also looking into an improper roadway worker protection event that took place on August 25th at Southern Avenue. A track and structures supervisor was removed from service for entering the roadway without the required protection. The crew was supposed to set up their work location at Anacostia Station, but was mistakenly at Southern Avenue Station. The supervisor repeatedly communicated F06 or Foxtrot 06 at his location to the RTC, the rail traffic controller, believing F06 referred to Southern Avenue when it actually referred to Anacostia. The rail traffic controller, seeing the incorrect location in their AIM display, on their computers in front of them, instructed the crew to clear the roadway. The confusion stemmed from paperwork that only listed the alphanumeric code F06 without specifying the station name, and the supervisor misinterpreted the map in his office. Final reports on both incidents are forthcoming, and we will present them once they are completed. Moving on to investigations before you today. Investigation Whiskey 329, 330, and 331, which you've had the opportunity to review, relate to red signal overrun safety events that occurred in January and February of 2024. Whiskey 329 relates to a January 3rd event at New Carrollton Rail Yard, where an equipment operator and flag person improperly moved a maintenance consist made up of a prime mover and flat car past a red signal without permission. I'll provide additional information on this event later in the presentation. Whiskey 330 relates to a February 13th event at Rhode Island Avenue Station, where a train operator moved the train past the red signal as trains were receiving permission to pass red signals at Fort Totten due to the signal issue at that interlocking. The rail traffic controller did not ensure communications with multiple operators during the service disruption, and included the required train ID, location, and track number. Whiskey 331 relates to a February 15th, 2024 event at West Falls Church Station, where a train operator moved past the red signal on the center track without permission. The rail traffic controller was working alone initially due to the button rail traffic controller going to the restroom, and had not yet set a route for the train to track 1. There were multiple service disruptions on the ARG line, including arcing, smoke, and evacuation in an area of Eastern Market Station, and smoke between West Falls Church and Dunloring stations at the time of this event. As of September 1st, 2024, there have been 12 red signal overruns reported this year, surpassing the 9 total events reported in 2023. In response to this concerning upward trend, the WMC has increased our independent review of Metrorail data and continued discussions with Metrorail personnel on Metrorail's efforts and focus on addressing the underlying causes of this increase in red signal overrun events. This includes the WMSC's review of Metrorail data that identified a red signal overrun involving a passenger train near Brentwood Rail Yard on July 16th, 2024, that would not have otherwise been reported to the WMSC, and investigated to identify opportunities to reduce the risk of reoccurrence. Causes and contributing factors related to these 3 events include non-compliance with written operational rules and procedures, inadequate communication practices, poor radio transmission quality, and a lack of training and supervisory oversight. For example, investigation Whiskey 329 relates to an equipment operator and flagger who improperly moved a maintenance vehicle past a red signal in New Carrollton Rail Yard without permission. The radio communications during this event demonstrate communication system challenges in this location. The interlocking operator granted an absolute block to move the consist to signal Delta 9942. The equipment operator repeated the instructions. However, when the vehicle moved a few minutes later, there was no recorded communication between the equipment operator and flagger. During the interview, the rail vehicle operator stated they radioed to the flagger and did not get a verbal repeat back. I just lost my spot, I'm sorry. They didn't get their proper repeat back, but the flagger proceeded to provided a perceived hand signal with their flashlight. The flagger could not hear all communications due to radio signal issues and assumed the block was provided to the station platform. Metrorail procedures require personnel to take action only when direction is clear. Metrorail procedures also require positive communications between a vehicle operator and a flagger. If communication is lost, the operator is required to stop. As the consist was moving, the flagger identified a red signal ahead of the consist and a train ahead, and communicated over the radio that there was a red signal. The equipment operator did not respond, and the flagger did not apply braking as required. In an interview, the flagger stated they thought the red signal governing their vehicle's movement was meant for the train on an adjacent track. The crew moved the consist beyond the red signal. The interlocking operator then observed a red signal overrun indication on the control panel and directed the crew to stop. The consist stopped 320 feet beyond the signal after passing through 2 switches and entering a 3rd switch. The investigation revealed switches were aligned for the movement. During the investigative activities, responding investigators also had radio communication challenges. However, Metrorail's Office of Radio Communications stated no trouble was found. Metrorail is in the process of implementing a corrective action plan to address a WMSC finding on Metrorail not maintaining functional communication systems across its rail yards. Metrorail is also in the process of implementing corrective action plans to address findings from the WMSC's communications audit, which identified that Metrorail repeatedly states that no trouble is found despite documented evidence of system failures. Thank you. This completes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Are there any questions on this event or any of the other red signal overrun events being considered today?
Yes, Vice Chair Lobby has raised his hand.
Thank you. Vice Chair?
You're muted, sir.
I'm not a very good button controller, I guess, because I keep forgetting to push this button here.
You speak very well.
I wanted to bring up just some things on these overruns, Mr. Quigley. I'm looking at some of the results of these investigations that Metrorail has implemented. It starts with a reminder. Rail operations distributed a reminder. Track and structures distributed a bulletin. Metrorail, added red signal overrun prevention radio announcements. Metrorail conducted red signal overrun campaign. None of these seem to be very effective because we continue to have red signal overruns and misunderstanding of what the requirements are. And what also struck me, it says Metrorail required personnel to receive re-instruction and refresher training. And to me, if some individuals need refresher training, where there's smoke, there's fire, that means that the rest of the workforce probably doesn't understand what's going on either. So a lot of these actions from Metrorail seem to be very focused on an event or the individuals. How do we really, address this problem effectively so that we have a decreased number of these incidents?
Yeah, I think the key is making it, I think it's too common it's a normal thing to pass a red signal, whether that's in a yard. There could be signals that are out and switches that are clamped, and operators are constantly passing signals in a yard routinely. Even on the main line, there's usually interlocking that's clamped, or controllers are giving permission to pass red signals. It's too common to pass a red signal, so I feel like it's.
So is the problem there aren't any consequences for passing a red signal? I know you get taken out of service, but does that mean you get an early quit that day or what?
Taken down for a drug and alcohol test and wait for your results, and then go back to retraining. That's how it's kind of set up right now. I will add that they are in the process. They have a pilot program right now for physical characteristics, which would help the train operators, not so much the maintenance operators that are operating the prime movers. But Metro does have a pilot program going right now for the operators to know where they're at on the territory, understand where the signals are and placed.
Well, let me ask one more question. I just need your opinion on this. As a professional, what's the most effective thing Metrorail can do to really stem these red signal overruns? What's the most important thing?
To me, I would say to make sure your operators know where they're at on the railroad, to understand where the signals are, if that signal is for you or if it's for the other track or the train that's adjacent to you. I feel like you really need to know where you're at on the railroad. A lot of these operators during OJT, they might not get to all the different lines, but then when they're out there by themselves, they might operate on the red line. It's the first time they've ever been out there on the red line. So there's majority of the system in Metro is very similar. The interlockings are similar, the signal placements, but there are those rare occasions like West Falls Church, which we're discussing. The signals are placed a little bit differently there than other locations. So just to sum up, just territory familiarization, I think, would help.
So that's really where they need to put maybe some resources and some emphasis. Is that correct?
Yeah, they do, and they have a pilot program, Commissioner Lobby. We're following closely. It's a start. It's something that I know I'm passionate about, but not just for the train operators, but for everybody. Individuals walking track, I feel like they need to know where they're at. I talked about the RWP issue that we're looking into that happened on August, I think it was 25th, where they totally were at the wrong station and they just assumed they were at the correct station but they weren't. And they were confident about it. So, I mean, if you're entering the roadway, if you're operating a train, if you're doing anything on the wayside, you need to know where you're at. And that's something that we're trying to push.
Well, how important is it for the controllers at the operations center? Do they understand, the layout of the land? Has that caused any problems also?
No, I think I remember from my training you had to learn your alphanumerics because, when you're given permission to pass signals or you're given permission for foul time, you're providing those signals and it helps them because they have it on their screen in front of them, right? So they're looking at the way of the tracks, but there is some focus on that in the RTC training that they need to understand the territory that they're responsible for. Not so much for the rest of the Metro personnel that are out there in the field.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sure,
Go on,
Commissioner
Rick.
Rouse has his hand raised.
Oh, yes, go ahead, please.
Thanks. I'll touch on that a little bit. That was one of my points here that I wanted to get some insight on was this, cap 183 and what we just talked about in terms of particularly territorial familiarization. I guess to feed off the discussion you just had there with Commissioner Lobby, especially for a system like WMATA, where a lot of it's underground, have we seen any issues with even the pilot program or what WMATA wants to do to better increase an employee's knowledge of the territory and the system? Any issues related to the fact that they are in a closed environment, a tunnel? It's much more difficult to know where you are and get territory or situational awareness when everything looks the same than when you're outside and you go, okay, yeah, by the blue house is when we need to start braking because we're going to hit this curve or whatever it may be. And that's going to be a blind part of the railroad. Have you seen anything in that regards? Is there anything we can do to help, or not us, collectively? Is there anything that can be done to help employees better know where they are and not lose situational awareness because everything just looks the same? And yes, it may say, K whatever on a sign there, but so does every other sign every 100 feet, right? Is there too much? Is there not enough? Is there anything that can be done there? Has that come up in any of these discussions about familiarization?
I would say during interviews, when we talk to train operators, I think their biggest complaint is, they can't see the signal number, right? Because it's dirt, whatever is collected on the signs, the chain markers. They've had a difficult time, being able to read the signage in the tunnels, or even outside as well. So that is something that we could probably take a better look at, Commissioner, just to help. It's important that, like you said, everything is the same. It looks the same. To know, which station has interlockings. I think that is a key, right? Not every station has an interlocking. Knowing which stations do have interlockings can really help out, where you're at on the roadway, or what you can expect, or understand the directions or instructions that you're getting from the rail traffic controllers when they provide you the alphanumeric, like Bravo 03, 02 signal. And then being able to see that sign, the signage on that signal is important.
Yeah, I was just curious because you already hit on my main point. I think that's a big issue we face is what we've talked about before. It's all connected. Certification of engineers or operators, if you want to call it that, or any other personnel. I like the pilot program, but I think it should extend it, as you said. If it's successful, work out any issues, but then it should go to everybody else who has to be out on that right away, whether they're MOW or roadway workers in charge. Knowing where you are is critical because that's where mistakes start. Is I thought I was here, right? And the other side to this, in terms of some of the issues we've seen in these accidents, is I think related to not enough training, right, and not enough experience. You see situations where either the flag person or even the operator, the procedure is if it's not clear, don't move, right? But we're all human, and tendency is, oh, I thought I heard that correctly. I don't want to hold up everything and tie a railroad up and be calling back and forth and look like I don't know what I'm doing by making multiple radio calls for the same instruction.
Right.
So that's a very natural human response. And you see situations where obviously they did not have the right information, or it wasn't clear, or radio transmissions were not working correctly, and they still proceeded for whatever reason. Right. And I think a lot of that is tied to the fact that they just don't. Training is critical, and getting the right situations to stress people in situations that you don't necessarily want to put them on a revenue train. So it's not just about how many times you get to sit in a seat and go by a section of track. It's also, better use of things like simulators, right? Train simulators, getting more hours like we do in FAA and airlines is to be able to put them in situations where they have to be stressed and see if they actually do what they're trained to do. And you just don't get that by the way we normally train. And this is not just a WMATA thing. This is multiple railroads and transit systems throughout the U.S. I think this is one of the struggles that we have is we get the minimum and we throw them out there and say, good luck. Right. And we miss the human aspect of, oh, I thought I heard that. I'm just going to go ahead with it because I think I'm okay. And don't really drill into them. No, I'm not sure. I'm going to go back on the radio, make sure I got the right instructions before I move forward. So I do think some of these caps, especially as we talk about certification, familiarization, and just getting experience before people go out there and have to be put in a situation that is usually not common, right? That's the other problem. It's not something they see all the time. These situations where they have issues and incidents occur because it's out of the norm, right? Normally it's just favorable signal, keep moving, right? And it's these situations where they get put into a location they're unfamiliar with, or they see something that they don't usually see that causes problem. And you can only work through that through experience. And I think that's something we'll need to look for in these caps, and also moving forward with the certification program. And as was mentioned earlier, making sure it's reinforced by going out there and doing, banner tests, flags, whatever you want to call them, efficiency testing, making sure people are actually following these. The other one, I had a question on Cap 100 that was mentioned. It talks about radios and quality of radio signal between yards and shops, but is this also addressing the main line, or is that a separate cap?
Let me call out Miss Rhodes or Paul Smith if he knows. He's our comm expert as well.
Cap C0100 does only address shops and yards, not mainline.
Okay. Is there a separate cap that's looking at radio signals as a whole in terms of mainline operations as well?
I do not believe so. I will confirm that for you with certainty, but to the best of my knowledge at this time, no.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, because I think, again, these are all tied together, and we've seen some of these themes before. And then one last one, and this is on 330. A question I had, I couldn't figure this out from the reports, but they mentioned Train 110 stepping on the instructions that were being given to Train 125.
Yes.
Where was Train 110? Was it in the same location? Was it?
I believe 110 was at the adjacent interlock, the Fort Totten interlock.
Okay. And what's confusing me is because then we got radio rail. Was that, and we have the button pusher. Is that the same person? Because we use two different terms in this.
Yeah,
contract.
so the radio controller just speaks, on the radio. The button controller is setting the routes, canceling routes, things like that.
Okay, so the button's the one giving routes, and then the
Yes.
radio is the one just talking, which
Yeah.
I still.
And the button controller answers all the phone calls. Majority of the time answers the phone calls, sets the routes. They're more of like the strategic person. They make the notifications to other departments, via the phone. Radio controller is strictly just stays on the radio.
Okay, so how would they, if they're giving permissions to 127, that's coming from the button controller, right? And if 110 stepped on them, they don't really have the authority to change their route or do anything, right?
Right. The radio controller will be given permission.
Okay.
Right.
It's situations like these that worry me about this whole setup. I don't understand it. I've never seen it work successfully. The person giving the authorities being the direct one talking to the train, because who was that just talked to me, right? Situation and making sure they're reading back and repeating. And I know I don't want to pull this discussion down because we've had those discussions and that's an ongoing effort. But this is another situation where there's multiple hands in the pot, multiple people talking, and the person who was supposed to get the message, it wasn't clear that they understood it. It wasn't clear that it got through to them. And the persons that are most directly impacted are the train operators and the person giving them the authority. And it looks like there's multiple other things in the way there. And so I just want to point that out because it continues to be a frustration when we see all these parties involved in a communication that should have just been two-way. And if somebody else got into it, okay, I'll get to you in a second, whoever that was.
Yeah.
Let's make sure 127 got what they needed.
No, I get it. I would say the communication between the two controllers works. It's easier to work with a partner than by yourself currently with how big the system is and the responsibilities of these controllers. It's when you have upper management and other departments coming down and talking while you're dealing with an incident, that's where you see those communication, issues where there's just too much talking going on. The button controller in this event wouldn't have been setting any routes because they were passing red signals. So their job solely was to make sure that the switches had a block on them through their dispatching software so that they couldn't be set. And the radio controller was just giving permission as soon as they could. So no route setting. But I get what you're saying. It can be a lot, going on, and you want to make sure everyone's getting the right information.
Yeah, it's the situation being that how did they not, if there's three people now involved, right?
Yeah.
Had everybody missed that the person that was supposed to be getting this instruction didn't get it, right? And I don't know, I don't want to pull too far down, but our train numbers being read back, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're supposed to be, yes.
Thanks. Thanks for indulging me on that, but I think that's
absolutely. We'll have to take a trip to the control center if you'd like.
Yeah. Thanks.
Any further questions from the commissioners, Mr. Quigley? So I don't know if this is apples and oranges, but I'm concerned about the rise in the number of red signal passing, and I'm just wondering, is there, when I wonder whether it's apples and oranges, what can we learn from the experience of other operators about passing red signals? Is there anything that's applicable to our situation that we could learn from others to try to figure out? Because to me, that's a pretty serious event. Anytime you pass a red signal, that significantly increases the likelihood that something's going to go wrong. And so it seemed to me that people would be putting quite a bit of attention into trying to address those. And I just wondered, is there anything to be learned from other properties?
Yeah, I'm not too sure what we could learn from other properties, but like you said, it is a serious event. So I mean, I think that's what we need to start off with is that focus that a red signal overrun is a serious event, and Metro needs to get that out there and really focus on educating their employees on what could happen if you pass a red signal and try to avoid making it so common to pass a red signal, whether because you have switch issues or track circuit issues, to keep that type of issues down. Like, the consistency of passing red signals, to keep them down and focus and make a big deal about a red signal overrun, because it's not right now. It currently is not a big deal to anyone, probably other than the safety department.
And it doesn't seem like retraining is the answer.
No, sir.
Any further questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Quigley?
Well, Chair Hart, Ms. Rhodes has her hand raised as well.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Just a very brief clarification for Commissioner Rouse in response to his previous question about C0100, which is regarding rail yards and shops. There is not any cap regarding mainline in a similar way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on this for Mr. Quigley?
I see no other hands.
Okay, thank you. In that case, Ms. Keyroad, would you please present the next reports?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigations Whiskey 0332 to Whiskey 0336, which you've had the opportunity to review, relate to improper roadway worker protection. Investigation Whiskey 0332 relates to a March 14th, 2023 improper vehicle movement and flagging within a work zone event at Smithsonian Station. A prime mover pushing a flat car collided with a warning strobe and alarm device while moving within an improperly set up piggyback work zone. Investigation Whiskey 0333 relates to a January 26, 2024 event at Spring Hill Station where a train passed roadway workers who were under AMF protection at 45 miles per hour. The advanced mobile flagger, who did not have their lantern illuminated and was not in the correct position, did not hold the train at the platform as required by Metro Rail procedure. Investigation Whiskey 0334 relates to an out-of-service train passing an advanced mobile flagger without stopping to be briefed at Rhode Island Avenue Station on February 27th, 2024. The advanced mobile flagger did not have the required flag in hand and did not use the correct hand signals. The train did not encounter personnel. Investigation Whiskey 0335 relates to a July 4th, 2023 event where two low-voltage technicians entered the roadway on track 1 without permission. While conducting a visual inspection on track 2, the personnel extended their heads through a breezeway that separates track 1 and track 2 near College Park Station, fouling track 2. This event was reported by a rail supervisor who was operating a train on track 2. Contributing factors to these events include ones listed in the red signal overrun reports presented earlier, such as non-compliance with written operational rules and procedures and poor radio transmission quality. Other contributing factors include lack of situational awareness, ineffective communication between personnel, and lack of supervisory oversight to ensure compliance with procedures, whether personnel understood instructions and the competency of personnel to perform the work assigned to them. For example, Investigation Whiskey 0336 relates to a student train operator who did not stop their train to receive a briefing from an advanced mobile flagger at Glenmont Station. This was a student train operator's first time operating on the main line. The student train operator was given a permissive block by a student terminal supervisor who was being instructed by a terminal supervisor instructor to cross over from track 1 to track 2 at the interlocking after the station platform. At the time of the event, an Office of Track Instructors roadway worker in charge was conducting an interlocking inspection at Wheaton Station under AMF protection. AMF's position at both Wheaton and Glenmont stations. Video footage showed that AMF at Glenmont Station had all required equipment set up on both track 1 and track 2 sides of the platform at the 8-car markers, including flashing amber lanterns. The AMF can be seen speaking with a train operator whose train was on track 2, as the student train operator of another train passed the station without stopping on track 1. The AMF notified the RIC of the approaching train that they had been briefed on track 2 coming to their location, but did not see the train on track 1. The terminal supervisor stated they forgot to advise the student train operator to stop for AMF briefing. During investigative interviews, the student train operator and train operator instructor said that the orientation of train 119 and its lights, which face them on track 1, before the train crossed over to track 2, along with a flashing proceed signal, prevented them from seeing the flashing lantern at the 8-car marker. After being granted foul time, The roadway worker in charge did not instruct the AMF to begin flagging or advise the AMF when foul time was relinquished as required by Metro Rail procedure. This resulted in ineffective communication between the roadway worker in charge and the AMF. The WMSC's issued its audit of Metro Rail's roadway worker protection programs on July 31st, 2024. The audit demonstrates that although Metro Rail has established policies and procedures, rules, training, and oversight of its RWP program, there are still deficiencies that put the safety of workers at risk. WMSC is reviewing proposed corrective action plans developed by Metro Rail to address the audit's 13 findings. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
Thank you,
Chair.
Ms. Rose. Are there any questions from the commissioners on this event or any other roadway worker protection events being considered today?
Yes, Vice Chair Lobby has his hand raised.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, and I remembered to unmute this time, so I deserve congratulations for that. But in looking at some of the responses that Metro Rail has made for roadway worker protection, these roadway worker protection accidents, and I don't need to remind the commissioners, we've been talking about roadway worker protection for a couple of years now. What some of the actions I see: personnel received retraining and refresher training. Metro Rail conducted a safety stand down. Metro Rail distributed a safety bulletin. Metro Rail developed a personnel notice, and Metro Rail updated its AMF flagging policy. And to me, these actions really don't reflect the seriousness of a roadway worker protection accident. You know, as we know from history, we had a number of fatalities in the past. 8 Metro Rail employees between 2005 and 2010 were killed because of roadway worker protection issues. So this is a very important issue, and I really don't see a good response from Metro Rail in addressing these issues. And on top of that, as Dr. Mayer had discussed at the beginning of our meeting, you know, there's talk about watchman lookout elimination. In our last meeting, we discussed a change in the speed at which trains can pass roadway workers from, I think, 15 miles per hour up to 35 miles per hour. All of these seem to be increasing risk to roadway workers in an environment where there's obviously issues. I'm just a little bit frustrated with it, and I'm wondering, you know, are we really concentrating on the right things? The advanced mobile flagger is another issue. Advanced mobile flaggers are really single point failures if they don't provide information to the trains, and yet again we have examples of advanced mobile flaggers that don't have flags or don't have the lights, don't have all the equipment they need, are in the wrong place, or are trying to protect 2 tracks at the same time. So are we really concentrating on the right things here in trying to get this roadway worker protection issue under control?
We definitely share the same frustration, Commissioner Vice Chair Lobby. I'm not sure if anyone wants to talk about more broad RWP, if they want to talk about the audit yet, or but we agree, like in these investigations, we're not getting broad changes in the recommended corrective actions.
And that's, I think, largely true of investigations in general. When we need to see broader change, it's probably not the investigation program itself that's going to bring that to us. It's going to be something else, and something else is, in this case, you know, right now we are in the process of, or Metro is in the process of developing caps in response to the RWP audit. Others can speak to exactly where that stands, but that's an opportunity for us as an agency to look at a higher level on corrective actions and where we want to see the roadway worker protection program go in the future. And as you mentioned, I said earlier that our current vantage point allows us to sort of see the individual proposals for change that Metro is bringing forward to its Rules Committee. And we internally believe that we need to position ourselves in a different vantage point to be able to kind of work with Metro to think strategically about the program at large, as opposed to either trying to plug leaks that are found in the retaining wall or correct issues as they pop up. And so we will be, particularly with your words of support here, Vice Chair, we will be working toward that end in the weeks ahead.
Well, thank you for that. And I believe that, as we develop these caps, I know we have audits going on and other activities. As we develop these caps, the caps are great, but the caps have to deliver a positive result. And as caps or proposals for caps are discussed with Washington Metro, I think we need to basically raise the bar and make sure that when they do respond to a cap or they have a work plan, that it's something that we firmly believe is going to have a positive result and help tamp down the problem. And maybe we were settling too early for Metro's suggestions, but it's really the caps have to deliver a positive safety outcome if they're going to be effective. Thank you.
Commissioner Hart?
Yes, Commissioner Bob.
Yes, I concur 100% with Commissioner Lobby's comments. I mean, we see some of the same things from meeting to meeting, and and most of these safety issues or cap issues are similar. We discussed the consequences, but what really are the consequences for some of the issues that we raised from one meeting to the next? And although there are corrective action plans, but what really are the ultimate consequences, if any?
Is that a question for, are you asking a discipline type question, or are you saying
I mean, in some industries, when there is non-compliance over a period of time for similar issues, then there are either financial consequences, at least in the world that I come out of, but in the safety area, what are the consequences on the other side when we have, if we take a log of many of the issues that we've had over the last several years regarding these camps, and we find out that 20 are similar, then what are the consequences?
Maybe I'll try to respond to what you're asking in a slightly different way than maybe you intend, because I don't want to mince words here. What are the consequences about an RWP program that's not meeting its intended goals? Well, the consequences could be worker fatalities, and the consequences in the past have been worker fatalities. So I said what I said kind of carefully, I think, because in my opinion, the RWP program is not effectively meeting its goals. And when we see what you said a moment ago, the hypothetical 20 events that have a similar route, what I'd like to see Metro doing, and what I think we should be doing, is looking for the systemic root and finding a way to fix it. And that fix is, in my opinion, likely to be changes to the program, changes to make it simpler, changes to make it better understood. I think that what we're seeing is a roadway worker protection program that needs some strategic change and needs some high level change, as opposed to simply a worker compliance problem that needs to be solved with discipline. Discipline, of course, is a tool in Metro's toolbox when needed, but I just want to make it clear that when we see workers say shortcut a procedure, I think it's often more productive to think clearly about what's the motivation behind that and why are people seeing that as an alternative, as opposed to simply punishing the behavior that we don't desire to be taking place. So I think that we can, as an oversight agency, work to focus our oversight and make sure that Metro is focused on its program execution at a more strategic level as opposed to a more disciplinary level. That said, I don't want to understate the value of discipline in those cases where rules violations are deliberate. And even for that matter, the economic, you mentioned, Commissioner Bob, that in your world, there are economic penalties sometimes for noncompliance. And that happens in transportation, whether by design or not. When an employer takes an employee out of service for a period of time, they're not on the clock and earning wages. So there is or at least there can be a financial component to noncompliance as well, even though, based on what I just said, I don't necessarily think that's the most useful place to start to bring about strategic high-level change.
This conversation brings to mind a big picture notion that I've seen in my experience, and that is whenever you've got a situation that problems keep occurring despite this fix, that fix, the other fix, you're trying all kinds of fixes, and the problem is still occurring. To me, that is a sign of inadequate participation, inadequate collaborative participation by the people who are involved in it, people who have a dog in the fight. And when people who have a dog in the fight are not included in the development process, then the development is not likely to be suitable for their needs. So I'm just wondering, is there a way to revisit some of these issues that keep happening over and over again, where we know with certainty that more training just isn't enough, but yet if we can get the people who are involved, who have a dog in the fight and can if they can participate in the process of developing a remedy, then the remedy is generally more effective.
The answer to your question simply has to be yes, but I don't think I want to say more than that, because I don't want to try to make it up as I go along. But I think what I would suggest we do is take an IOU with regard to looking toward ways that the WMSC can increase its effectiveness in the RWP program oversight. I share your belief, if I'm correctly characterizing it, I share your belief that the best procedures are result from cooperation among everyone involved, not just managers and rules experts, but also the frontline employees who have to actually execute those procedures.
Correct.
And Chair Hart, Commissioner Rouse has his hand raised.
Yes, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, safety is a multi-front battle, right? And I think we've touched on a lot of these issues before. And I'll be honest, I think some things are easier to change than others. We talk process, procedures, and even technology that can help address some of these hazards. That's pretty finite, and we can kind of wrap our hands around it. The other challenge that WMATA and everybody else in this industry faces is more cultural. It's the safety culture, as we've talked about, right? And everybody who works in safety knows that's a much more difficult thing to change. That where some of these processes and rules can take a year or so to change and put into effect, trying to change the way people approach their jobs is something that usually takes longer. I mean, it can be generational and sometimes, and that I think is one of the challenges. And how do we address that? It's not as simple as the caps and the things we talk about from a process side of things. It's more reinforcing good behavior and you know what's not acceptable. And you see it even in these reports. You see once again a situation where somebody, when questioned, said, "Oh no, we weren't there." And I don't know the full story, and I don't want to presume that they were being deliberately dishonest here, but we've seen that before, and that's a totally unacceptable behavior, right? And especially when we're talking about safety in people's lives, that has to be stopped down to the point where everybody understands that if that's your approach, don't come to work, right? This is not a job for you. On the other side, I think we need to do a better job of raising up situations where we see good activity. And I know we've done a better job of doing that recently, and I've started to see it. And I think it's just something that needs to continue to happen. And, you look at 335 here, this transportation supervisor who was operating the train, right, and noticed something and called it out. Said, hey, wait a minute, that person wasn't supposed to be there. That's something you do. I mean, again, human nature, they may have just thought, was that person supposed to be there? I'm going to let it go because I don't know. I don't want to look like I'm wrong or something like that. But this person did the right thing. They called it out, tried to get some action on it, said, hey, I don't think these people were supposed to be here. I wasn't expecting to see somebody there. And that's exactly the type of personality, the type of approach to the job that you want to see. And hopefully that person gets commended for doing that. And hopefully we see more of that, because you want to reinforce those types of behavior in people and say that's what you want to do. If you see something you're unsure of, radio, call it in, get some clarification on it. If you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, if it's unclear, don't move that train until you're 100% clear on it. So, we talk about these bigger picture issues. Some of them are more tangible than others, and the cultural issues are really challenging, I think, for everybody to face, whether it's us or WMATA or anybody else in this industry. And one way we can do that is making sure we're reinforcing what's good and what's bad here in some of these reports. So I think the way we've started going through this and discussing some of these reports, and not just saying, okay, it looks good, another set of accidents or incidents, that's really where you peel some of that layer back and say, okay, what looked good, what didn't, and how do we, if nothing else, put it out there for everybody to witness, right? So I just wanted to bring that up because I thought this is a good example where you see both sides of the coin from a cultural perspective and safety.
Thank you for that. Any other comments from the commissioners or anyone else on this issue?
I don't see any other hands.
Okay, then we'll move on to the next set of reports. Mr. Quigley, would you please present the next reports?
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigations Whiskey 337, 338, and 339 relate to improper door operations. In 2023, there were 16 improper door operations reported by Metrorail to the WMSC. As of September 1st, 2024, there have been 13 such events reported this year. Improper door operations can be caused by human factors or mechanical defects. Investigation Whiskey 337 relates to a November 28th, 2023 event at Columbia Heights Station, where a train operator improperly opened all the doors on the non-platform side of the train while offloading customers. The investigation determined that the push button to open non-platform side doors was manually activated. However, a zero speed relay fault caused doors on the platform side to close uncommanded as a failsafe to prevent train movement when train doors are opened. Investigation Whiskey 338 relates to a January 11th, 2024 event at Federal Center Southwest Station, where a train operator did not verify the platform side of the station and improperly opened all the doors on the non-platform side of the train while rushing through door procedures. The probable cause of each of the events being considered today include human factors such as noncompliance with operation procedures and lack of situational awareness. For example, Investigation Whiskey 339 relates to a train operator who opened doors on both the platform and non-platform sides of the train at Rhode Island Avenue Station and did not report the event to the control center. When doors were opened on the non-platform side, riders were exposed to the risk of a steep drop from the high elevated structure for approximately 11 seconds. The event was only discovered due to a rider reporting the event via social media. Approximately 40 minutes after the doors were opened on the non-platform side of the train, the assistant operations manager in the control center received a report that the train doors opened while the train was moving. The radio rail traffic controller instructed the train operator to stop the train and check the entire consist for an open door. Train operator reported that no doors were opened and was instructed to offload riders on the platform and perform a ground walk around. The rail supervisor took over train operations and removed the train operator from service. Data review confirmed the train operator opened the doors on the non-platform side using the manual door open push button. The train operator had only been certified in the position for 4 months and stated during the interview that another train operator requested a drop-off at Brentwood Yard, which they had never performed. This requires the train operator to stop the train at an employee-only platform and allow the employee to use a physical key to open the train door to exit. As the operator attempted to contact Central Control about the request, they opened the doors on the non-platform side of the train. A security guard notified the train operator of the error, but the train operator did not report the event. As a result of this and the other improper door operation events being considered today, Metrorail required personnel to receive refresher training, including on the procedure of the platform berthing, station servicing, and overruns. Thank you. That completes this presentation.
And Chair
Thank you.
Hart, Commissioner Conklin has his hand raised.
Yes.
I was just curious whether all of these incidents were in advance of the automatic door operation system-wide, or if any of these occurred after that procedure has been put in place across the system. I'm guessing that they're all older than that, but I wasn't sure.
Yes, they were before ADO.
So with ADO, is this a recurring issue, or has ADO largely addressed this issue?
I would say it's addressed most of them. I don't think we have the data yet to really see to really crunch the numbers. I would say in another month or two we might have some better numbers for you, and we can put them to you. But the red line was first with the ADO, and now ADO is system wide. So like I said, we should be able to get some better data to see what how beneficial ADO has been.
And in these, I was going to raise this question earlier, but I saved it till now because all of these events that you've reported on are sort of recurring themes that we see in these presentations. And I think it would be useful for us to have some longitudinal data that we review as part of these investigations if we're going to package them like this. You can look, 2020, it was 500, in 2021, it was 300, in 2020. It was 200. I'm using obviously optimistic trends here, but I think that would help us understand the magnitude of these issues and whether things are improving or getting worse, because each incident on its own is obviously serious, but you don't know whether any of the systematic approaches Metrorail or the commissioner recommending are having the impact we want to see or not when we just look at them one at a time.
Yeah, understood. Thanks for the feedback.
And Vice Chair Lobby has his hand raised.
Yes, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions on this. Can you describe the role of the zero speed relay in door operations?
Sure, I will call on my colleague John Dorenzo, Mr. Dorenzo.
Sure. The zero speed relay prevents the train from taking a point of power if it does not have all doors closed. And in that one particular case that was referenced, the circuit board for that function had failed, just I guess coincidentally at the same time that the doors opened off the platform, which is why the doors closed on the platform side automatically. There's a left side and a right side control for it. So depending on which system is operating, whether it be the door system or the ATC system.
So the zero speed relay basically it has to give a zero speed indication in order for the doors to operate. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I'm wondering, because in one of the reports it said that riders reported that the doors were open with the train moving. Does that make sense?
Yeah, when I went back and looked at the data, the WMATA investigative team didn't detect any train movement when the doors are open. Now, it's hard to say where the location was that they were saying the doors were open when the train was moving, but from what they from the download that didn't give us any information saying that the train actually took a point of power with the doors open.
Okay, so, but in the perfect world, with the system configured the way it is, the doors should not be able to be opened when the train's moving, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I wanted to ask one more question regarding door operations. How difficult, well, first of all, let's talk about automatic door operations. With automatic door operations, the doors will automatically open on the correct side of the train. Is that the way the system works?
Yes.
Okay, so we have automatic door operations. Do we have it on all lines now or just some of the lines?
I think it's on throughout the system now.
Okay, and does it work continuously, or are there times when the operator is still doing manual door operations?
There have been instances where stations, the auto doors did not work and the operators still have to do manual door operations. And that's what happened years ago before 2009 when everything was in automatic mode. If the train doesn't operate properly, if the automatic door function doesn't operate on the train properly, that would require the operators to open the doors manually, or if the wayside doesn't give the proper signal to open the doors properly, then the operator would have to open them manually.
But it's really an exception to normal operation, and I assume that for the operator to have to manually activate the doors, that this would be less often than, let's say, than he would have to operate the train, because with automatic train operation, there still needs to be times when the operator operates the train without automatic train operation in place. Is that correct?
Yes, they still need to know how to perform all the functions that they had done before any of this was put back into place to be able to operate safely across the line.
So the automatic door operation knows, where the train is, that knows which side of which doors to open and which doors not to open, and it does it automatically. Is there any reason why you can't have a similar feature in for manual door operations? I mean, apparently some of the logic is there already. Why are we still talking about opening wrong side doors, at this day and age?
Yeah, I know in the past they've done platform detect on some of the legacy cars, and it didn't function like they had wanted to, and it ended up being removed. I'm not sure why that wasn't pursued any further to keep from that happening. What you're talking about with the off-platform doors.
Well, on the new cars, the announcements are for each station. They know where they are on the system. They know what station they're approaching. I would think that with the logic on board the new cars, that it would be very easy to enable the correct doors and disable the offside doors. Is any of that discussed, or is any of that incorporated in these new car builds? 7,000, the 8,000 cars?
As far as the 8,000, I'm not sure if it's been actually discussed in it. As far as the 7,000, for the doors to open manually, you were supposed to hit the door open button. You'll start getting a sound, a beeping sound on the console. You have to acknowledge that, and then you have to open the door again. So it's like a 3-step process almost to get the doors to open. I'm not sure what happened with the one at Rhode Island Avenue. Why the operator, maybe because the train had already received a train berth automatically or manually, whether the doors are in automatic or manual at the time. I'm not sure on that one, but not sure why they would have been able to open the doors on the off-platform side.
Okay, well, to me, these new car builds that they're receiving. This is a golden opportunity to put some technology in there to eliminate this problem once and for all and forever. And I would encourage Metro that, with all the computers they have on board these new cars, that this would be a good feature to include in their specification, because the information is there. It's just, it seems that nobody's decided to apply it to take care of this safety issue. And this, we continue to see these offside door operations. They are annoying for operations. They put the passengers at risk, and it seems to me they could be easily alleviated with a little bit of smart technology on board the trains, and that would certainly at least get these numbers down. We're seeing that they're not going down now. Hopefully, with automatic door operations and some of these this new equipment, hopefully this will begin to go down. But that's a feature that could easily be incorporated, at least in my view. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any further questions regarding improper door operation?
I don't see any other hands.
Okay, seeing none, Ms. Quiroz, would you please present the final report?
Thank you, Chair Hart. The final investigation report ready for consideration today, Whiskey 0340, relates to a train collision with a person at Spring Hill Station on February 8th, 2024. This was due to a deliberate action. Thank you. That completes today's presentations.
Thank you, Ms. Quiroz. Are there any questions from the commissioners? When you say it's a deliberate action, someone jumped on the track is what you're saying.
That's correct.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners?
I see no hands, sir.
Okay, in that case, is there a motion to adopt the investigations collectively that have just been presented from Whiskey 30329 through Whiskey 340? Is there a motion?
So
moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay. Yay.
Yeah.
All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair, the vote is 6 yeas and 0 nays. The motion to adopt the investigation reports Whiskey 0329 through Whiskey 0340 passes as presented.
Thank you. We have one procurement-related resolution for consideration today. Under the WMSC's procurement processes, the commissioners must authorize the CEO to make an award when the cost is expected to exceed $50,000. Mr. Angie, would you please summarize the proposed procurement?
Thank you, Chair Hart. The WMSC staff are developing a procurement for outreach support services. These services will include coordinating and providing regular informational updates to the WMSC stakeholders at the local, state, and federal levels. The cost of these services is expected to exceed $50,000 per year. Therefore, we are requesting authorization to proceed with this procurement. Staff reviewed the need and budgeting of these services with the Finance and Operations Committee during our meetings in August. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Angie. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners for Mr. Angie?
I see no hands.
Thank you. In that case, is there a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say yay. Yay.
Yay.
Yay.
Any opposed, please raise your hand and say nay.
Chair, the vote is 6 yeas to 0 nays. So the motion to adopt Resolution R 2024-06 passes as presented.
Thank you. Is there any other business that the commissioners would like to address today? Hearing none, that completes our meeting for today. I would like to thank Dr. Meyer and his staff for all their hard work to continuously improve the safety of Metro Rail, and I would like to thank them for their presentations for this meeting. I'd also like to thank the commissioners for being so engaged in the process and in this meeting, And finally, I would like to thank the members of the public who attended. As a reminder, you can always report any concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels, or by email. We expect to hold our next public meeting on October 22nd, 2024. We appreciate your joining us today and look forward to seeing you next time. Hearing no further business, this meeting is hereby adjourned.